Sacramento Kings last month decided to fire head coach Luke Walton. The news didn't really come as a surprise after the former Laker led the team to an early season record of 6 wins and 11 defeats. The 1951 champions have failed to challenge for a while, so a change was probably overdue. Today we're discussing the coach's firing plus the Kings' poor early season form, so stay with us. First up, let's look at Walton's career so far. Luke Walton, who, as we mentioned earlier, played for the LA Lakers back in the day, began his career in LA and spent 9 years in California, before spending his final season in the game in Cleveland with the Cavs. He was an NBA champion in 2 consecutive years with the Lakers in 2009 and 2010, and the 32nd overall 2003 round 2 pick scored a career total of 2,649 points during his career, which was fairly impressive. Luke is the son of former basketball player and NBA Hall of Famer Bill Walton, who was an NBA All-Star in 1977 and 78, plus a champion in 1977 and 1986, which is also pretty impressive. After his playing career finished, Walton Jr. started his coaching career as an assistant over at Memphis Tigers, before moving on to LA Defenders in a player development role. He spent 2014 to 2016 as assistant at Golden State, before taking the Lakers job for the following 3 years. After the Lakers, Luke moved to the Sacramento Kings, where he delivered a 68-93 record, which didn't exactly set the world alight. Sorry, Luke. He won the championship as assistant coach in the 2015 Steph Curry-inspired season. Little is known what will be next for Walton Jr., but almost after 2 decades in the sport, nobody would begrudge him a short break before getting stuck into his next role. What is your favorite memory from Walton's career, and do you see next for him? Let us know below. So, what happened with his firing? Stay tuned to find out all the details. The Kings have struggled recently and haven't really challenged for the past 2 decades, which is disappointing for fans of the team. In terms of management, they have gone through coaches pretty rapidly in the past 15 years and seem to struggle when finding the right man for the job. In this time, they have had 10 official head coaches, which doesn't do much for stability. After firing Coach Walton after just 17 games, they're now on the lookout for a new head coach. Walton was in the 3rd year of a 4-year contract, and Kings GM Monte McNair said, "After a thorough evaluation of the season thus far, I decided to make a change to the head coach position." McNair went on to thank Walton for his service, but ultimately results had been disappointing, and Walton's job was reported to have been on the line even last season, with the Kings finishing 12th. Having not made the postseason since 2006, the Kings will now have to start from scratch, yet again. They run the very real risk of writing another season off right in the middle, and the longest drought in the league seems like carrying on. It seemed the writing was on the wall for Walton, especially since owner Vivek Ranadive is known for his lack of patience and expects instant results. In his 8 seasons of ownership, the Kings have been through 6 head coaches and 4 general managers, which, as we mentioned earlier, is not the best catalyst for stability. Phew. Next, we're looking at some other NBA personalities who have been fired, starting with Trailblazers GM Neil Olshey. Neil Olshey was fired last week after 10 years in the role of GM in Portland. The decision comes after complaints of a negative workplace environment and practice facility. An investigation was launched back in November into workplace misconduct amid reports of Olshey being the catalyst of a toxic, hostile work environment where staff members have been subjected to intimidation and profanity-laced tirades, among other bullying tactics. He sounds lovely. Portland announced their decision last week by saying, "Out of respect for those who candidly participated in that privileged investigation, we will not release or discuss it. We are confident that these charges will help build a more positive and respectful working environment. Have you ever had to work in an environment like this? Let us know your worst workplace stories below." Olshey had been under pressure this offseason after hiring Chauncey Billups, who was infamously accused of rape back in 1997 during his time with the Celtics. He said that they took the allegations very seriously, but this was ultimately the beginning of the end for Olshey. He said, "We took the allegations very seriously and treated them with the gravity that they deserved." The Trailblazers have installed Joe Cronin as interim GM until they can find Olshey's permanent replacement. Who do you think would would be a good candidate to step into that position? Let us know below. We're talking Lloyd Pierce next. Stay with us. Back in March, Atlanta Hawks fired head coach Lloyd Pierce after less than halfway through the season. The Hawks had been expected to do well last season, but midway through, the ownership was obviously less than pleased about what they had seen. It wasn't super obvious that Pierce was in trouble, but after a 109-99 loss to Miami Heat, Pierce was relieved of his duties. After his assistant, Nate McMillan, was promoted to interim coach, Pierce voiced his support for the choice. The former Cavs and Golden State assistant, Pierce, was thanked by the Hawks not only for his work with the team, but also within the city of Atlanta. Hawks GM and president, Travis Schlenk, had this to say after Pierce was let go. "As we said at the beginning of the season, our goal was to have progress this year, to move forward, and we just felt like that wasn't happening as quickly as we wanted it to. These are not easy decisions. These are real-life decisions that affect multiple families, and they are not easy. But we felt like for the organization, it was the best thing for us to do moving forward." What do you see as realistic progress for the Hawks? Do you think Pierce deserved to be fired? Give us your opinions below. Nate Bjorkgren is up next. Stay with us. Back at the start of this summer, Indiana Pacers gave Nate Bjorkgren his marching orders after only 1 year in the hot seat, after failing to make the playoffs. It was reported that he was relieved of his duties after the Pacers GM and ownership decided they needed a more experienced head coach, which begs the question of why he was hired in the first place. There were reports that Bjorkgren had lost the dressing room, which basically means the players had lost all respect for him. The Pacers finished a mediocre season with a record of 34-38, and during the first ever play-in tournament, they were hammered by the Washington Wizards in the second game. The upper management had decided that the Pacers were not playing the sort of basketball they had come to expect and pinned the blame on Bjorkgren for this. Known for their powerful offense, they were averaging 115.7 points per game. But the problem was that they were also conceding the same amount of points at the other end, which ultimately cost the former Suns and Raptors assistant his job as head coach. Pacers president of basketball operations made the following comments when asked about Bjorkgren's departure. "We've had such a defensive culture that it's different, and we know that we're going to have to get back to that. This is quite damning for Bjorkgren, as the Pacers expect to be tight at the back of the court. And finally, we're looking at coaches who've been fired whilst trying to coach megastar LeBron James now. Stick around." No list of firings would be complete without mentioning the whole host of people who have been fired whilst attempting to coach the current LA Laker, who has a reputation of being extremely hard to coach. One of the greatest ever players, James is a generational talent, but is known to be tough on coaches, for one reason or another. During his NBA career, James had played for 5 coaches who have been fired whilst coaching him. Paul Silas, coach of the Cavs during LeBron's first stint, was fired after being hired to mentor the young James. After he was fired, the Cavs pretty much collapsed, which proved that it might not have been the correct decision. Brendan Malone was also given his marching orders after recording an 8-10 record whilst coaching the Cavs legend. One coach LeBron feels was harshly treated after being fired whilst coaching him was Mike Brown. Others to have been given the bullet after coaching the Lakers legend are David Blatt and Luke Walton, who we talked about earlier. What do you think the reason is for this phenomenon? Is it LeBron's fault, or do you think it's more of a case of him expecting the best? Let us know below. As always, thanks for joining us today, and remember to stop by next time for some more fun revelations. Why not do us a solid and share this video with any NBA fans you might have lurking on your social media friends list? Bye, guys.